Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien versus Predator Galaxy podcast. This is regular host Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me is my regular partner in crime, my fellow young blood.
Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop.
And for this one, we called in a specialist, a ex Black Ops turned MMA fighter. You'll understand the reference to that one when we get to his pick for best stories in this episode. Is Mr. Lieburn. Welcome, HuDaFuk.
Okay, thank you for having me.
I like your shirt, by the way.
Yeah, I got dressed up for the occasion.
For those listening, it is the Peace Through Superior Firepower pulse rifle shirt that Hicks wears in the film, or one of the
No,
Marines. Frost. That's right.
Frost.
It was Frost.
Is that graphic the MP5 version, or is that the Thompson
Yeah,
version?
yeah, it's the. Oh, actually, I don't know. Yeah, because it's got the funny stock on it. Funny butt stock.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the original.
Cool. I always meant to get that shirt, to be honest. I never got around to it. There's too many. I remember when it was hard work to find nice geeky outfits or
Yeah.
nice geeky shirts. Now there's just far too fucking many.
Yeah.
Love it. This is episode 175, and we are going to be reviewing Predator: Eyes of the Demon, the second of the Predator anthology novel. No, it's not a novel. Predator anthology
I made
books.
that mistake too.
I remember getting told off by Brian for that like 6 years ago when we had him on the podcast for the first time. Yes, they are books. They're anthology books. Once again, edited by Brian Thomas Schmidt, who did the first one, and with quite a lineup on this as well. Many returning authors and some, well, one, I
Quite
guess.
a lot of newbies actually.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking about how special it is Peter Briggs gets to do something
Yeah, that was
in this
nice.
one, which I suppose we'll be talking about with Adam's pick as we go through. So we're going to run this one kind of like we did the Ultimate Prey review episode, which was the AvP anthology, which was again edited by Brian, along with Jonathan Mayberry. Also co-edited that one with him, and we've each picked our favorite short from the lot to talk about, as well as our least favorite short, which I think we'll have some discussions over here because I don't particularly agree with your guys' picks.
Well,
Well,
that's only because you picked objectively the worst one.
No, I was thinking about this actually. There's only two in this book that I dislike. One of which I've obviously picked. The other one, neither of you but were bothered by, apparently. I completely disagree with Lee's choice. And Adam's choice, I was just like, it's all right. It's okay. But I think given we all know our choices for favourites, I think we're all quite in agreement on those ones, even if we're talking different ones each. But yeah, that like in general, should we do a quick in general as to thoughts on the book compared to the others?
yeah, I mean, I think just like Ultimate Prey, this is more hits than misses, right? There's only one, maybe two stories I would be like, maybe it's best if that wasn't part of this. I mean, there's some that I feel less strongly about, but they still feel like solid enough Predator stories. And for Predator fans, I think there's enough here that if you're looking for an anthology of eclectic stories, um, this does the job. It's an engaging read. Now, unlike Brian's first Predator anthology, If It Bleeds, this doesn't really have any stories set in the distant past. The only story that's set in the past at all really is Aftermath, which is immediately after the first Predator film. Now, this kind of came out around Prey, so that may or may not be the reason that there were.
Well, we know it was.
I know.
By
I
the
was,
time
I was being coy. I was being coy.
no, by the time this comes out, Brian's interview will be out, and Brian says it in that interview.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did come out and say that. So yeah, you won't find any samurais fighting predators or old western ones like you did in the first book. But you will find some in the future, which is I believe one of your stories, Lee,
Yeah.
that you picked. So yeah, overall, I'd say for me anyway, pretty solid book, engaging read. There's more to like than to dislike. Oh, and full disclosure, just like Ultimate Prey, Aaron and I did help out with this one. We didn't have any
Mhm.
creative control, but if you think that taints our review, then take that into consideration.
If anything, it makes me more angry at other bits of it than taints it for the positivity's sake. What about you, Lee? General overview.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was as good as If It Bleeds, but to be fair, that's a high bar to clear.
Hmm.
Um, I thought it was better than the AvP one, Ultimate Prey. Um,
Okay.
Most of it I ended up really enjoying. There was one that stood out as being I really didn't enjoy it at all, and then most of everything else at least had something about it that I really liked. Um, and then there was a few really standout stories, which are basically the three that we're going to talk about, I think. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, solid read, really good read.
Mm. So, not to sound like a broken record, but I pretty much agree with these two. There were only two shorts in this book that I was like, no, thank you. A handful of it was okays. But mostly I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the majority of this book. Um, I think there were a little more than the three that we're going to be talking about that stood out that I just really fucking enjoyed. Um, I think there was a good handful that I really, really, really enjoyed, but for brevity's sake, we're not going to go into everything or break down all the shorts in this episode.
You gonna do a written
Uh,
review though? Maybe.
Maybe we'll see. I was talking to Lee before we started about just how how dreamed I've been this
Yeah.
year,
It's been a while
and
since we've seen a written review from you, honestly.
well,
I think.
the last one was Colony War. Basically, I
Yeah.
started reviewing Infernos, writing a review for Infernos, and I did really enjoy Infernos. But at that point, that was when stuff started kicking in the real world that just sucked all the
Yeah.
life out of me, and I've not recovered yet, unfortunately. I do agree with you guys that it's not quite up to If It Bleeds as standard, which
To be
is
fair though, If It Bleeds was fantastic. There was like
absolutely
one I
cracking.
didn't like, and pretty much everything else in it was brilliant.
Mm. There was one I was kind of like on, which was Steve Perry's sequel to Turnabout.
Mm.
The rest I absolutely fucking
I
loved.
liked that one. I thought it was good.
I thought it was okay. I thought it was okay, but it didn't match up to Turnabout
I'm
in my
like, if
opinion.
that's the worst of that book, then yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty solid. You
And to
gave
be
that one a
fair,
10 out of 10.
Turnabout is also brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, Turnabout was one of the best of the franchise. If It Bleeds, Turnabout, South China Sea, the best the Predator novels have to offer. Although I do think the Hunters and Hunted is up there. Not quite as good as those other three, but still really good.
Yeah,
Still
that
really
had
good
its
books.
moments.
I still have never read South China Sea, so we got to review that sometime.
Oh, that's a good one.
What? You really?
Yeah,
Genuinely, the
never read it.
Predator in South China Sea is my favorite Predator from anything ever.
Yeah.
He's
I love
just
Turnabout.
such a glorious dick.
Yes, he is everything I like the Predator to be.
Yeah. I think Turnabout is a better novel end to end, but the Predator in South China Sea is absolutely fantastic.
I I reread that over a night a couple
Mm.
of years ago because I had a night shift doing some escort stuff at work. And I just sat in the break room next to where I'd left these guys just reading South China Sea, and I blitzed through it that night. I was like, I forgot how fucking good this book is. That's brilliant.
If you ever do a review of that one, please call me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'd love
Okay,
to be in
okay.
on that one.
Any excuse to revisit that book.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway,
We're talking about this.
Sidetracked, yeah.
we're already. It doesn't take us much, does it? And just for note's sake as well, this is the first of our podcast episodes that we are broadcasting live for our Patreon supporters. And this one was a little short notice, so it's just Sarah with us at the minute. But I'm still very excited about that. and this will be something we intend to do going forwards with a bit more notice for people, so they can experience us fumbling around without my edits to make it a little bit smoother when we release it. But yeah, that's one of the perks for our tier 3. I forget what name we gave them. Was it warrior and
Elder and Predalians, or no,
yeah,
Praetorians. That's right.
tier on Patreon? So we'll see how we get on as we do these kind of things. Hopefully it won't be too out there for folk as we go on. So Adam, why don't you lead us off with your pick for favorite?
So it's hard to pick a singular favorite for me in an anthology. I usually have a few that I like, but one of the ones I liked the most was the Peter Briggs one, Little Miss Nightmare. So both of the stories that I would have picked, I guess, if you hadn't have picked it first, Aaron, with Field Trip. Um, both of the
What?
stories,
I didn't pick Field Trip.
I
That's for bad.
well, that's what I mean. Like,
Oh,
okay,
okay. Okay.
so for good, this and Field Trip bad, right? Like, both of these show predators in not their typical kind of hunting setup, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where it's done right, where we have this female predator hunter, and we're shown from her perspective as well as the perspective of the main antagonist, as well as the perspective of the pursuer, the human pursuer of the main antagonist, who is like an agent trying to track down this terrorist. And interestingly enough, we find out this terrorist is just some privileged lady who's just wants to blow shit up. And this story takes place in Rome, and this predator scientist, essentially, who's she's able to hunt, she's able to fight, but she specializes in studying the human race, and that's something I've personally always wanted to see is more predator scientists. We got that a bit in the Rage War trilogy, so it's nice to see it here. But she's also pursuing this terrorist, which she calls like the aberration or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So that was kind of cool. Um,
She's like a social scientist, really,
yeah,
isn't she?
she studies the internet too, and she has some commentary on like the effects of social media on humanity. And just imagining a predator scrolling through social media is kind of fun to me. I don't know. This story though was really well written, really engaging. I think Peter Briggs did a fantastic job on this one. Um, it was cut a little short from what I understand because it was one of the longer ones initially.
It was significantly
Trimmed
edited
down.
down by
Yeah.
Brian. Yeah,
Um,
at
but
Peter's request.
but I really enjoyed this one. It had solid action. It introduced some things that we typically don't think about in terms of a predator story, and I think there was enough there with the characters. I mean, you can't really have too much character development in anthology shorts, um, and so that's always kind of a pitfall there. But with this one, I felt there was enough that we could understand the characters, understand their motivations, and we got a bit of backstory for all of them. And the whole three perspective thing I thought was done really well. So yeah, I really dug this one. What did you guys think about it?
Lee, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it was one of my favorites as well, actually. It was one of those stories where the actual story itself, there wasn't much special about it, but the way it was written really made it. Like, I really loved the way he wrote the story. Um, it wasn't like it wasn't always the easiest to follow, uh, but that sort of I don't know how to describe it, but I had to work at reading it, but that made it all the more rewarding. And like I said, it was just it had some great predator action in it. The characters were really really interesting. Like you said, the main sort of the villain, the terrorist character, the fact that she didn't have any agenda, she was just out for shits and
An
giggles.
anarchist.
Yeah. It was just really really good. I love the sort of the way it sort of jumped around a little bit in terms of he had flashbacks in it, things like that. I really loved the way he wrote it. It was definitely one of my picks for one of the best book in the book as well.
Yeah, same. And I think it's funny, Adam, that you mention the difficulty in really fleshing out the characters in shorts, because I feel like the three that I know we've all picked for top favorites all did characters really well
Mm.
in short page word count, I guess, in a short word count. So that's something I do agree with you all on. I think the antagonist, I can't remember her name.
Something with a T, wasn't it?
Tracy, was it? The antagonist, Tracy. Briggs did a really good job on getting into her head and making me hate her without really making me hate her. She was a very interesting bad guy in that, yes, she had no real reason to be doing what she was doing other than that she was just a sadistic anarchist. Like that flashback to her first kill and then her reaction to them finding out that she'd succeeded in what she was doing. She cut the brake line of a family's friggin' travel van. I'm struggling with words.
Station wagon.
Yeah. And Briggs has her squeeing with delightment and stuff like that. I was like, Jesus Christ, yeah, okay. But then it also made it interesting in terms of it being a anti. The heroes were an anti-terrorist force basically, but she wasn't a terrorist in the traditional sense.
Yeah, she didn't have an agenda. It was just
Yeah,
for the hell of it.
and then they make the comparisons in the book of it not being a my religion's better than your religion kind of mentality to it all as well. I also agree with Adam in terms of I don't think it was exclusive to this one and Field Trip in terms of different predator professions, I guess. But that was one of the things I did really enjoy about this, and it was one of the positives about Field Trip that I had. And it made me think of Scott Siegler's short in Ultimate Prey, because she was a social, that predator was a social, no, not economist, ecologist. She was an ecologist. And I kind of got those sort of vibes from this as well. From the predator character in this, Rickon. And I think it's really interesting. And I really like when the EU sort of explores that a little bit. Because it adds a dimension to them that is not this boring humanization of the predator's perspectives. That's some of the things I dislike about when we get predator POVs, which I think was actually something was feedback Brian had got from the first one, where they were like, include more predator POVs, include more predators winning if you do another one. And I always struggle with that because I think it humanizes them too much sometimes. But what Peter Briggs did here with Rickon, I didn't feel humanized it much. That was an interesting spin on it. And there was a lot of interesting predator tidbits in this one as well. I fucking love this. I thought it was brilliant. The idea that the predators are so, that sci-fi cliche of the high advanced racers hitting the point where they're so advanced, so self-sufficient, technology is so great that they can go and pursue the things in life worth pursuing. So, for like the Federation in Star Trek or the Ancients in Stargate, it means learning about life and art and literature and the meaning of everything. For the Predators, it meant they were so enlightened that they could go off and pursue their biological imperatives of going around fucking everybody up. And I love that. I thought that was a very cool twist on that kind of advanced life form sort of trope, and I thought that worked really well.
And even though I wasn't crazy about the film, to say the least, I did like the little tie-in to The Predator, where
Yeah, I
they
was just
talked
going to mention
about
that.
the warring clans, and that the younger ones were experimenting with DNA and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a nice little tie-in, even though that movie's terrible. Like, I still appreciated the way that tie-in was handled. I
There
mean, it
was a
was
lot
just a
of
little footnote, but
yeah, there was a lot of neat little references, like to real world movies and stuff that never felt like it was heavy handed. Like it was, they would just, he sort of slipped them in, and they always worked.
yeah,
Hmm.
they even hinted at the aliens. They said a certain like
Mm.
exoskeletal extraterrestrial species.
The Scourge or something like that. The Predator tie-in I thought was cool as well because he said that they'd unearthed old forbidden research and brought it back up again and gone round and attempted it again to cause a big ass war that they got a couple of planets destroyed in the process and a couple of civilizations wiped out as collateral. But they finally put the aberrations down. So that was really interesting. And the idea of of Rin hunting Tracy, not because she was a worthy prey or anything, but because she was a social anomaly, was interesting. And that's something I've liked that the books have done. It's something that one of the shorts in Ultimate Prey, I forget what it was called, but it was the one where it had a predator taking live humans as like exib, you know, zoo trophies. I like the idea of there being different types of trophy taking for for the predators. It's not strictly about a skull on a wall. There's different ways of taking trophies, and I liked the idea of. I mean, it's not so overt in the way that Rickon behaves in this one, but it was about her understanding and deterring Tracy from the unsociable
Yeah,
behavior, I guess.
she was sort of the idea that Tracy could upset the balance on Earth and ruin it as a hunting ground as well. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that sounds about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Because what Tracy's doing is just so ridiculous. It might spark off something that's basically going to lead to, I don't know, nuclear holocaust or something, and then the predators won't be able to come and hunt us anymore. So she was taking her out to sort of try and prevent that from happening.
Mm. And that really does add an interesting dynamic to the predator
Yeah.
behavior.
It's also interesting that we explore this female predator's past a bit, and that she lost her sibling that was more into hunting by hunting this dangerous race that they weren't prepared about. This like bird monster on another planet,
Oh, it's not
and
just another planet, Adam. Come on.
it was what, their homeworld, right?
Oh, it's an Octurian sickleback.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry.
I think it
Arcturian
was.
reference from Aliens, then, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Oh, okay. So another alien reference in this story. That's good.
I
Appropriate
was
from Peter Briggs.
I wasn't sure about that to start with, when I was thinking about it. Because I had a very big thing about appropriate terminology in the Predator POVs, but then I was like, no, because I guess that means the Arcturians are their own thing, and the Predators are aware of their own reference to their name.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I was like,
I
oh,
mean,
okay, that works, and
if
that
they're
I liked that.
if the if some predator scientists are on the internet, yeah, that would make sense. Which I like that too, because it makes me wonder, like, okay, how did they know the backgrounds of these people they abduct for the game preserve planet and stuff? And it makes you think about, there must be predators in this role that specifically find individuals like that for
Hmm.
that to happen. Um,
Yeah, they weren't just picked at random, were they? They were chosen.
yeah.
No, which I
So
think is another dynamic to their society that
Mm.
doesn't make them more human or less interesting to me. It fleshes them out, and I think is a real. I don't want to say it tickles me thinking of there being some sort of tracker guys looking for the worst of the worst, but I find that layer really fucking interesting, and
I
I'm
mean, it's not
so
even
glad.
necessarily different individuals. It could be the guys actually doing the kidnapping are like, searching for a good target
Yeah.
before they go out and do the kidnapping.
Hmm.
Like you say, it just adds another layer to them without humanizing them too much.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, who doesn't love a chase through Rome? I mean, it gave this thing a very spy movie kind of feel about it. So I dug that too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
again, it did exactly what I always say is the best thing you can do with Predator, which is to take a genre story and then just chuck the Predator into it. And this was like a spy counterterrorism story that just happened to have a Predator in it.
yeah, that worked well. And I do think Tracy Briggs translated to prose very well. I mean, I felt a
Mm.
little bit of the screenwriter in there, especially with the way it started. With I visualized this opening sequence in the Colosseum with the cloaked Rickon knocking about. But yeah, I thought it was a real solid prose piece of work from Peter, and I'm so glad he finally got something published and out there officially when it comes to Alien, and I hope he gets that chance with Predator. Sorry, and I hope he gets that chance with Alien.
Yeah.
Had you done
And
any prose
AvP.
before?
Say again?
Had you done any prose before?
Not that I'm
Was this
aware
his?
of.
Because I was really looking
Or
forward to his
published
because
prose.
it was I was looking forward to his because it was him, but I
Hmm.
wasn't sure how good a novel writer he'd be, if that makes sense, because I've never because obviously I only know him through the script,
Yeah.
and it really impressed me. Like, yeah, top job.
Mm. Anything else to say on that one?
I think we can move on. So One
Do
I
the
was a
bad
bit
one then, Adam.
one I was a bit less crazy about, unfortunately, was Yvonne Navarro's short, which was Slide Dark in the Daylight. Now, normally you'd think I'd like a story about a small Colorado town featuring a predator rampaging through it, but in this case, I just thought it didn't work. It just kind of felt a little rinse and repeat to me, where we would go from random horrific thing happening, people reacting, they all die, the people find them, the same thing happens. Like, it didn't feel like any characters were developed in this beyond a sentence or two. So there weren't many introductions for the characters, the town. We got a little bit of backstory with our the character that sees the boy get pulled into the tree initially. Um,
She's the one that closes the short out, isn't she?
yeah, and I also didn't like the ending bit where the predator elder is just like, "You're unworthy here. The humans can kill you." I'm like, we've never really seen anything like that. Like, um, and that was another thing where just the nitpicky fan lore side of me. There was another one that's like, oh, the elders would execute any predators that have been captured. I'm like, there's so many stories we've seen where that's not the case. So it's
It's where they take
the space
you know
samurai
how I
bit.
feel. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know how I
it
feel
did
about
take
that.
that too far. The whole, yeah, it's hard to balance the predator code thing with they're just effed up hunters thing, and it can go too far in one way or the other, but often it's done too far in the you know honorable space samurai way, and I think that's how it was done here. um but yeah, I just feel like this was a bunch of predator running around the suburbs and not really much story here, other than predator kills these people, moves on, kills these people, moves on, kills these people, moves on. Like, it was entertaining enough. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, you'll still get it with this, but it just didn't engage me too much, unfortunately. So I thought it was one of the weaker shorts in this book. But how about you guys? What did you think?
So I wouldn't rank this as down there at the bottom, but it was certainly one of the ones I thought it was only okay. And Yvonne Navarro wrote well. I thought a lot of the prose, a lot of the descriptive language, a lot of the action was very well written and very enjoyable. But it's so it's hard to disagree with you about any of that criticism there because yeah, it was moving around a lot of the characters, a lot of different characters, and nobody. I always say I don't have to like a character as long as I find them interesting to engage with the story. Nobody was really interesting to me here, and I don't know if that was perhaps just setting. I don't find the country, um, small town country American setting quite as interesting. Well, no, not as interesting. Quite as identifiable, should I say? Sorry, as Adam, and his love for things like AVPR and that kind of setting. But it didn't engage with me in that way. And I think toward at this point in the book, because this is one of the last ones. I don't think it's the last one, but I think it's the second to last. Uh, yeah, it's the second to last. And I think at this point, when I was reading the book, you don't really notice it when we're working on it, but when you sit down and you read the book as a whole package, it's like, God, this is just another fucking Bad Blood. They've all gone to town. Well, not they've all. A lot of the authors leaned in on the Bad Blood thing, and it got a bit too repetitive. And I think by the time I got to Sly in the Dark, I was like, I'm so bored of this now. Yeah, you muted me.
I was saying, yeah, because Bitter Hunt was already the big Bad Blood kind of story of the book, I think.
Well, I thought there was quite a few. I mean, not the werewolf, fucking hell, Aaron. The Bigfoot one, that predator was implied to be one of the killers, the Killer Clan from the comics, which are essentially a clan of bloodbuds. You had a lot of like the younger ones who were much more inclined in the kill, behead, I want blood and guts kind of way that wasn't interesting in the way that I like to think of Jungle Hunter as this sadistic killer. It was just very kill, 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 and some of that did start to get a little bit repetitive, and I did hit that point when it came to Sly in the Dark. The behead thing was, yeah, I mean, it kind of made that one stand apart a little bit from the others that were doing a similar Predator Bad Bug aspect of it. But I see where you're coming from, Adam. It's not necessarily something we've seen before, and it did feel a little the lead up to the main character being standing in front of the elder going, no, you killed a load of people, we should get to kill him, was a bit ugh. But I actually didn't mind that. I thought it was interesting to play with that code, not necessarily in a predator. You mentioned the elders killing predators that had been captured kind of thing. I don't think it was overly samurai-ish, but it gave that elder a little bit of the respectability that I like without leaning too far into being a Klingon or a space samurai. Lee?
Like you said, I can't really argue with anything you said, but I felt like the whole way through this story sort of balanced on a knife edge between being a decent read and being a bad read, and it never quite went either way. It got pretty close at times, but I didn't mind it. I didn't think it was. It wasn't one of the stories that I really disliked. I did read the book over a fairly long period of time, so that might be why I didn't feel like it was as repetitive as you guys did. Because I went on holiday halfway through it and then sort of picked it up again. So yeah, I didn't mind it. It was all right. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't awful. Nothing about it really upset me too much, but nothing about it really blew me away either. It's about the most I can really bring myself to say about it, I think. Which I guess in itself says something.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to really discuss. It's just it's there kind of part of the book. But I do think the sequence in the gun shop was fun. I do think
Oh, there
that
was,
that
yeah, like I
was
said, there was some bits in it I really liked, and then some bits in it I really didn't like, and they just sort of balanced each other out over the course of the story, and it wound up being neither good nor bad for me.
Though I did get the AVPR flashbacks during that gun shop
That didn't
sequence.
help. Yeah, the whole. To be honest, just the whole setting just made me think of Requiem, and I hate Requiem, so that didn't help.
If you're gonna do that, you need aliens too.
And it's a shame because I really enjoyed Ivan Navarro's short in Ultimate Prey. I thought it was a very nice, strong,
Abuse
contained.
interrupted, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
of course
you love Music of the
it's
Spears
good
as
the
well,
Spears,
the novel.
yeah. But then I absolutely loathe her short in Bug Hunt, the worst of the lot in Bug Hunt, in my opinion. And I'm not
Which one was hers?
the Hicks one.
Eh, yeah.
Yeah, I forget the title of it, but it was the one
Yeah,
about
yeah,
where
that
it
was.
seems to imply that Hicks had encountered the aliens before the event of Aliens, and
I'll
yeah,
give her a pass for that because I get the feeling that was maybe a story idea that was given to her. I could be
well,
wrong, but that's my gut feeling.
well. So I mean, it's kind of disappointing. I mean, we understand that there's some personal stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily public or not. Um, Going off with her and her life. So I think that's why Adam sort of felt a little bit bad about picking this one as well.
Yeah, yeah. I almost didn't pick it because yeah, I've liked her writing in the past. I really liked Abuse Interrupted from AvP Ultimate Prey. Like she's a solid writer, and as a creative myself, like some of the things you do connects with people and some of it doesn't. That doesn't mean you won't like this story. It's always tricky doing these anthology reviews because typically there's one we settle on that we're like we all don't like this one, but one of us picks it first. I think we're definitely going to be talking about that one here. But the other ones we have to pick usually aren't bad. They're just the
Mm,
ones that didn't connect with us as strongly.
Yeah, I can genuinely say there's only two that I really disliked, and this wasn't one of them.
yes, fair. Yeah, like I said, I thought it was okay. It wouldn't be. I picked again. There's two I really didn't like in this, and this isn't one of them. Lee, do you want to take us on to your choices?
Okay, so my favorite, or my pick for favorite anyway, was The Fix Is In, uh, which it one of the things I always feel like it's hardest for authors to do is to get that kind of military banter and make it
Mm-hmm.
sound real.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna have to check because I've completely forgotten the author.
Jonathan Mayberry.
Of course, it is. I knew his
Mm-hmm.
name, and Mabry really nailed that with this. Like the sort of the interaction between the characters was spot on. It sounded genuine. It sounded believable. And it's another one of those where, for the most part, I don't think the story was. It's a lot of it was sort of a story we've seen before, but again, it was so well written that it elevated it. So basically, it's a sequel to Mabry's short from If It Bleeds, Game World,
Mm-hmm.
featuring the main character from that, who in that short was sort of pitted in like an illegal, like the sci-fi equivalent of bare knuckle boxing, where he has to fight a predator, an infant predator, well, sort
As
of
it turns
teenage
out,
predator,
yeah.
yeah, and then in the middle of their bout, Daddy comes calling to basically fuck up the people that have kidnapped his kid and forced him to fight in this arena. And my human character, Fix, ends up escaping with all the money. This story is a sequel where he has now been basically nabbed by the government for all this money that he's nicked and forced to join a mission to go and recover this mystery ship. So he gets press ganged into this mercenary group, and it turns out the ship they're sent to go and recover is a predator ship that's crashed on an asteroid. And they get there, and it's all sort of very mysterious as to what has happened. The ship has crashed. There's all these dead predators on board that look like they've been arranged in like an honorable, sort of a reverent kind of poses. And it
Mm-hmm.
basically turns out at the end of the story that it's all just a big fucking trap. There's one predator still alive, and he's just sort of lured them to his ship so he can nick theirs. And at the end of it, they're all just stuck on this planet as their ship just takes off with this predator legging it in their ship. And I loved it because it was, again, it was a different take on a predator. It was
Yes.
a predator doing something we've not really seen them do before. I mean, you've got the whole setting up a trap thing for them, but not to kill them, just to get the
Mm-hmm.
fuck out of Dodge, basically, and leave them stranded there. And it was different, but it still felt true to the character. Like I
Yeah.
could absolutely see, because they don't have to kill people all the time. If he's got a different objective, why would he mess about skinning some dudes when he can just piss off and do what he needs to
Yeah.
do? So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I said it was nice because I like that it was a sequel to his previous story, but like Aliens was to Alien, it was a completely different kind of story. It was the
Hmm.
same guy put in a completely different situation. I said really well written. I really dug all his banter between his characters. It felt like, again, with a limited page count, he did a good job of giving them personalities.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. As I said, it was the first one I think that had really sort of grabbed me as I was reading through, because it's fairly early in the book, and up until then it had been good. I'd been enjoying it, but then this one I was like, yeah, I'm digging this.
Oh, you see, this one's actually after my pick, so I'm kind of offended now.
What was your pick? What one have you done?
Lion.
Okay. I actually had it in my head that it was before Lion somehow. Lion was very good, but no, this one, for
Mm.
whatever reason, it sort of ticked all the boxes for me.
No, that's fair enough. I completely agree with pretty much everything you've just said. I love the twist on the predator being there the predator luring them into deeper and deeper into the ship,
The
to
Sorry to
steal
interrupt,
their
but
own.
the really good thing about the twist is that you know something is coming.
But
You
you
know
don't
a predator's
expect
going
it
to
to be
jump
that.
out,
Yeah,
but you don't expect it to do what he does. Like
no.
it's like you know he's going to show up, but then he does something completely unexpected. That was what made it so good.
And I think it's worked up quite nicely as well in terms of, as in the idea of a predator stealing a ship, because the Fix, as he's going through this crash predator ship, he's noting that there's a lot of stuff built onto this. There's a mismatch of designs here, and it's sort of Mayberry leaning in and opening up to this idea of the predators stealing and utilizing other races' technology, which I think is one of those fan theories that not everybody agrees on, in terms of how much the predators actually make themselves and how much they steal. But it sort of eases you into this concept of a predator being able to just go and steal somebody else's ship and know how it works and get off with it. It was a very nice twist. Um, Here's a question though. So this is something Brian brought up in our interview last episode. The predator's not really in this story. You only see dead bodies.
That
Only its
was
presence.
actually that was actually something else I liked, because again it was different.
Yes.
And like I said, you're sitting there, you're reading it, and you know it's a trap, and you're just waiting for this dude to show up, and he just fucks off like with their ship. Like it was so unexpected, and yet expected but unexpected, and that's what made it so good. So yeah, I actually liked that there wasn't a whole lot of predator in it, like, because you still get the impression he's a bad motherfucker, because he kills all of their sentries without them even getting a word off. Like they don't even
Hmm.
realize until they find them all dead. But you never actually see the guy. So yeah, and I really liked that. That was one of my favorite things about it, actually, because again it set it apart.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think this was probably part of the discussions we had while we were working on it as well, because I know that came up then. Again, that's something Brian talked about in the interview, and I remember really fucking enjoying this, and that was part of the reason why. It does very much stand apart, but the presence is always there. The predator always feels like it's there, even if it's on the periphery of the story or even if it's off screen. And I think the whole build up to them getting to the ship has a very alien feel to it. It's not quite as mesmerizing as the derelict lead up, but it still imbues a lot of that mystery and a lot of that there be dragons kind of nature to them finding this crashed extraterrestrial ship. So it was just dripping in atmosphere and tension throughout. I also completely agree about the banter. Like I said earlier, we've all picked ones where they've done great work with the characters in so little time. And a lot of the part of this was Mayberry's banter between the Marines, the mercenaries, the PMCs. That was something else in this. I always wonder about the organizational structure of PMCs. And I think I tried to look this up while we were working on it, because you have LTs, you have sergeants, you have lieutenant privates and stuff like that. And I'm like, is this the way Blackwater works? Is this how an actual PMC organization would structure their ranking systems? And I'm fairly sure I talked to some. I don't think obviously doesn't make it into what we're doing on the book, but I talked to some military guys. Master Chief on our board, he used to serve, And yeah, that's not the way it works. That's not the way. It's not the way PMCs organize themselves. So that's something I always kind of raise my eyebrow when it comes to these things. If I had to nitpick anything, it would be that. But yeah, the banter was brilliant. Jenks, who was very much the Hudson-esque character of the story, was real charming. Actually, well, maybe not charming, real endearing. And I think that's when it comes to Alien, when it comes to Predator, I think that's something authors do genuinely tend to struggle on is being James Cameron without being a bad copy of James Cameron. And Mayberry has it down at pat in this short, in my opinion.
I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with everything you guys have said. I mean, this was one that I really enjoyed, and yeah, I thought it it was well done how Fix kind of caught us up with what happened in the previous story in If It Bleeds. And I really liked him, just like you guys say, the banter and him connecting with this younger squad of PMC soldiers. And so, at this time you're starting to care for these characters, and it's at the point where they're exploring the ship, something's about to go down, and then the predator is just out of there. So it's a curveball that I thought was effective. And I mean, if this was a longer story, I'm like, okay, well, where would they go from here? Would we just go to 3 months in the future where they've repaired this predator ship? Um, and as far as like the predator stealing technology thing goes, I mean, there was nothing, like, someone like me who's not as crazy about that idea. There was nothing here that took that too far, right? Like, and that was another thing I thought my pick handled well, the Little Miss Nightmare, because the predator scientist does kind of talk about that, how they emulate other technologies and incorporate other technologies into their own, but they still have a base technology that they've built themselves that they understand. I was more against the whole, what we kind of heard on the tapes, the Isabel tapes for the game Hunting Grounds, where she was like, they don't even understand how it works. It's like, oh, come on, really? But this story I thought was really engaging. I thought Fix was a charming character. I liked a lot of his kind of like inner thinking, how that was described. And yeah, this felt very much like an aliens kind of set story. We're in the future and there's a squad going down to this planet to investigate this ship. Like, it felt very aliens, but with, the predator focus. So yeah, it was just really appealing sci-fi story to me. I totally dug it.
Want to see Fix come back? You want
Oh
to see him
yeah.
survive?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I thought he was a fun character. So yeah, if we get another anthology, I'd hope Mayberry continues this plot line.
Lee?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Likewise. Again, I already mentioned it, but I really liked how he took the same character and put him in a very different story, and I'd love to see him do that again.
Mm. I think it'd be a very different survival story
Yeah,
for the next one, but we'll see. Come on then, buddy. This is where I think me and Adam are going to very much disagree with you.
fair enough. So to be fair, this pick was most basically the one that I was absolutely going to choose had already been stolen, so I couldn't do it. So I went with Aftermath by the main man Brian Thomas Schmidt. Um, and the reason I did is not because I thought it was really bad, but because I thought it started with so much promise and then it kind of fell apart. Um, and in a way that annoys me more than if it had just been bad. Like a story that sort of starts well and then trails off. I feel like you were so close. Um, so basically, this story is what happens to Dutch after the events of Predator. So it starts off, he's in a veterans hospital and he's being interviewed by Keyes and Garber. Um, and to start off with, I thought the characters were written very true to how they were in the films. Um, but basically, they discover that there's another predator on the loose somewhere nearby, killing people in the forest. And so Dutch breaks out of this hospital and goes after him, basically looking for some revenge. And of course, Keyes and Garber are also after this predator, trying to capture it. I said it started out feeling really grounded and really true to the films, but then it just felt like it just got too over the top towards the end. Like when Dutch finally catches up with the Predator and they're fighting, and the thing's literally hacking into him with its wrist blades, and it just doesn't seem to slow Dutch down at all. It just got too over the top for me, and I said it disappointed me because I'd been enjoying it so much up to that point, and I also felt that the characters strayed away from how they felt in the films, and just became quite cartoony towards the end. So yeah, it disappointed me because I'd been digging it so much to start off with. Um, but I know you guys disagree with me.
Adam, do
You
you
go
want to?
first. You go first.
I love. I completely agree with you in that I think it starts very fucking well. I think it ties into the film and the existing sort of lore tidbits, I suppose, that we had from things like the Predator 2 novelization and the Hunting Ground tapes, actually. You know, there was a real strong sense of continuity and connection and authenticity um, to that start of it. You know, I did hear Arnie, I did hear Gary Busey. I think Adam Baldwin, I think Garber's always a little bit of a
To be fair, he didn't have much to do in
non-character
Predator
anyway.
2, so
Yeah. Um, but what Brian did, I thought worked quite well to start with. Um, I don't th- I don't agree with you in that it went over the top. Maybe there were some elements of there were like two little bits that I was like that I think could probably contribute to what you felt there. Um, but for me, it was things like, and this is something we argued about. Me and Brian argued about.
I know what you're about to
Um,
say.
if it bleeds, we can kill it. And anybody who listens to the show knows how much I hate reused dialogue because it pulls me out of the story. It always has, and I hate it. And it's just one of those things that me as an audience member and the person writing this don't agree on because they're having a fucking blast um getting to reuse these these quotes from the originals, from other things that they might love, and they're having fun doing it, and it pulls me out, and I hate that. And I do think that can contribute towards a bit of an over the top sensation. um the other thing that I thought might I think stretch the limits of what I was willing to accept was things like when the Predator ship shows up and the helicopter doesn't get blasted. Um, that, yes, I can agree, stretched the realms of what I was willing to accept as realistic there because I thought that had been shot straight out of the sky. Um, but
and
otherwise,
just the end
sorry, go
was
ahead.
really the end was like where he just jumps out of the helicopter in midair at the end, like, and falls to his death, or like it was such a weird ending that just like, because it's not like he explained that the helicopter was just sort of hovering just off the ground. Like it sort of implied that they were up in the sky flying back to base, and Arnie's just like, oh, I'm going to go fuck up some more predators, and just jumps out like with no parachute, and like after
Okay.
he's been half hacked to bits by a predator. Like it was just, like I said, it just degenerated into something quite cartoony for me, and that was so disappointing after how it started.
Do you feel like the end, that part of it could have used a bit more polish to reduce those kind of,
Yeah, I mean, even if it'd been something like they were flying over a lake and he jumped into the lake, like that would at least be
or the skids weren't quite as
believable.
far off the
Yeah,
ground?
but he literally, they're
Okay.
just flying over a forest and he jumps out, and it's like, okay.
See, I didn't read it as them flying, those fucking well above treetops or anything like that. That wasn't the read. That wasn't my read of it. But
Yeah, maybe I just misinterpreted it, but that was sort of the what I took away from it, and it was, yeah, it was.
The only other thing I'd have to criticize, I think, would be the convenience of there being a predator relatively nearby, not long after Dutch has been debriefed. And I feel like this is one of those ones where perhaps it should have been a bigger story, more fleshed out, more time to piece things out, kind of
It
narrative.
it did feel quite rushed in the second half.
Mm. So I think that would be the only other thing I'd really criticize.
I mean, I enjoyed the story, but yeah, it did have a few issues, and I agree with what you said, Aaron. Like when you have the callback one-liners, like if they're done well and they are hard to do well, they can be fun. But oftentimes they just feel forced and like it's trying to be fan service, and I'm not crazy about it either, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I thought the story started off strong, like those conversations with Dutch and Peter Keys, like that was interesting. Seeing those initial days, like after this event had happened, and hearing some of Dutch's thoughts about what had gone down. Um, I thought that was written pretty well, and I thought the kind of woodland setting was interesting. How he's just hunting down this predator, um, and I also liked some of the lore elements where we focus on this younger predator, and it specified that oh, this is how he's getting blooded, and not all predator clans. Again, we're hinting at aliens here in this predator
Hmm.
book, but not all predator clans do it that way, and
Which
so
was
I
nice. Yeah.
yeah I very much liked that. Um, you know, kind of like we saw with prey, this is a predator going after wildlife, and the the scene with the young predator fighting the cougar, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you guys though that this does kind of fall apart towards the end, and it feels quite rushed. I mean, we've jumped from Dutch's perspective to this predator's perspective, but there's no resolution on the predator's character side of things. It just kind of ends. So we don't see. I mean, it's hinted at that his father is coming to rescue him, this predator character, but we don't see any of his interaction with his father after this. There's no real conflict resolution with Dutch, who had engaged this predator, or if Dutch was going to confront the father predator, like that. So it just felt like it kind of left it hanging at the end to me. Um, but overall, I think it was still an engaging read, you know, and for the most part, I liked it. I just felt like it was a bit rushed, kind of like you guys had said.
Yeah. So I wouldn't place this one at the bottom for me. The criticisms of it included, this was one I did very much enjoy, to be honest. Um, and you bring up a good part there, Adam, of it mirroring prey in some ways, which was fun to see and to experience the predators in the sort of monologue of the wildlife that he'd been tackling with, where I was like, I was disappointed with the mountain lion. I thought that was going to be an interesting challenge and stuff like that. So that was fun. I actually quite liked the predator POV in this one, but again, I wouldn't place it at the bottom, but I enjoyed this one. Should we do my picks?
Yep, your turn.
So my pick for favorite was The Lion of the Himalayas by, I think it was Amar Habib. And it was a short about a ex-soldier living in the towards the Himalayas in Kashmir, and he had a very tough experience, shall we say, and ended up living on his own with the dog, and he is tasked by a nearby. He's become a hunter, a bit of a hermit, and he's tasked by the locals to go into the nearby forestry and take out a brown bear, an Asian brown bear, I think, or a black bear, that's been killing some folk. Turns out that bear's a predator, and it just becomes this very primal and introspective short of this man, this battered old man, um, confronting this predator. And primal is a word I think I most associate with how this is written, because it is very much man versus nature, man versus beast, um, man versus man in terms of himself, and man versus man in terms of conflict. There's a lot made of. Now, I admit, I'm not a fucking social political expert in any sense of the word. Um, so there's a lot made of like India versus Kashmir in this. And I had to go and have a read up of it afterwards, but it sets a very nice dark political character background for the main character in this. And I really enjoyed it. I really got sucked into this battered old man dealing with the shit hand he'd been dealt. His family had been massacred. His village had been massacred. He had nothing to live for, and he was a beaten shell of his old principles as the leader of like a resistance movement against the Indian government. And it takes this boy who is seemingly living on his own, who happened to be the son of somebody he used to command, um, to sort of steer him back on the path. And he what was the character's main name? It was Abdallah. And it ended with Abdallah going to confront this predator and accepting a fate with a smile on his face. It wasn't this shadow of his massacre of his wife and his daughter that had been giving him nightmares. It was sort of just I don't know how to word this now. It was acceptance of an end of life without necessarily a depressing angle of it. It was this primal, this nature acceptance of it. This was a short I thought felt like a Dark Horse one shot. It felt like something I could have envisioned being done in Dark Horse's heyday. I really, really fucking loved it. There was some great action. The prose was brilliant. The character development was brilliant. Again, this one's focused mainly on Abdallah. It is focused on one guy. So with all that word count being devoted to character development, it's easier for Amar to make that work, but he fucking makes it work. So yeah, again, primal is what is how I thought about this.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all that. What I really liked about this, spoiler alert for anyone who's not read it, is the guy goes into the forest. I mean, it's not a bear, it's a predator. If you're reading this book, you know it's a fucking predator. So he encounters the predator. Predator fucks him up. But he falls off a cliff into a river, so he survives and escapes. And then the rest of it is about him sort of gearing up for the showdown with this predator. And then he loses and gets killed. Like
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it somehow it wasn't depressing, but it was just so refreshing, because you sort of think, oh, he's gonna kill the guy, because he's geared up for it. He's set his traps. He's lured it to a spot where he thinks he's gonna have the advantage, and then it just does him in. So I really liked that. I thought it was probably the best ending of any of the shorts in the book.
Yeah.
And like you said, because it just had basically the one character throughout, it was easily the best developed character in the whole anthology.
Mm-hmm. And my heart broke for him. When it actually gets into detail of what happened to his family, I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah.
And he even
especially
loses his dog in this one too.
Yeah. That I think was the only bit I think could have been improved, was the dog dying to the predator. Because I think some of the pros, or some of his reading of the scene was, but my doggo didn't attack anybody. I think that was the only thing I would have changed would have been have that dog go for the predator, or make it more overt that he was going for the predator, um, to give that predator a bit more of a reason to stabby the old canine. Only criticism.
I also quite enjoyed this one. Interesting dynamic with he falls off this cliff and gets knocked out, and then he's kind of saved by this boy, and he finds that this boy's father was someone he had fought alongside with in these battles, and the boy had kind of recalled some inspirational stuff he had said, and he's like, "Oh, that guy's dead now too, just like your father," because he's, at this point he is a broken man, and it is about like him having nothing to live for, so nothing to lose, and he decides to face this predator, and through this trial he essentially gains the renewal of wanting to kind of be alive again, I guess. um and of course the Himalayas are a beautiful setting. I played a lot of Far Cry 4, so I do remember like those
You're a very well
vistas and
traveled
stuff.
man.
uh so imagining the predator in an environment like that is just kind of cool to
The
read.
the inspirational quote bit, as you so put it, I think is a great line in here as well, and it of course goes towards the title of the short. To live as a warrior and die as a lion is far better than live in fear of a tyrant. I really liked that. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, I do feel like, just like you, this is one of the stronger short stories in this book. Didn't see a whole lot on the predator side of things, honestly. This was more a focus on this character's like inner trial, I think, and the predator was kind of a catalyst for that.
Again, it was a genre piece with the predator dropped into it.
hmm And again, it's a show of the flexibility of the strength of Predator as a device, I guess. Much in the same way as, you know, I love Prey for Naru's journey. It's such a universal character journey and universal trial that we can all experience. This sensation of being told you don't belong and stuff like that. And Abdallah having this admittedly far more brutal path towards a crisis of self than any of us necessarily have, but that in itself I think is quite universal. Crisis of self. So yeah, very good short, really good. So my pick, which apparently is the one we all would have picked if we all could pick one, was Field Trip, which I think is made a bit more disappointing for me in the fact that it was written by, was it Bob or was it Michael? I think it's Bob, isn't it? Robert Greenberger, who co-wrote Predator: Flesh and Blood, which was one of Dark Horse Press's. Well, there was only four, for fuck's sake, two of which were brilliant. Flesh and Blood was really solid, basically. It picked up on a lot of the shitty strands of Forever Midnight and did something really good with them. So I really enjoyed Flesh and Blood, and I was quite looking forward to this. And it started off a lot stronger than I remember it starting off, actually. It ended up being pretty well written, and it's got some interesting angles to it. And it's basically there's a very heavily pregnant predator woman acting as the sort of scout guide, I guess, for a bunch of unblooded predators. Their ship, due to a malfunction, crashes in sunny old England, and they find themselves nearby a bunch of historical reenactors. And then he just goes to pot. These young predators decide they want some blood and start fucking shit up, and then you have reenactors with blunt blades and fucking crossbow bolts with whatever bags they put on the end of and of them being fired. It just all goes tits up after a very interesting start of, like we were saying earlier, the idea of predators with different roles that aren't necessarily go around hunting, killing people, and the idea of like them being taught scout preparation and stuff like that was cool. But it's just this heavy obsession in the last half of the book of them all being God's creatures and these two pregnant characters. No, it felt like fucking Greenberger had a pregnancy thing going off while he was writing this, and not to slander anything there, but the focus on it was unnecessarily, and it brought nothing to it. It was just them wanting a fucking predator giving birth in the middle of a field for some reason, and I don't get it. I don't get why this direction was went in, because there's something far more interesting buried in this. The idea of the predators coming across reenactors, I think, is really fucking interesting. And they figure it out in 2 seconds in this. And granted, yes, it makes sense that the observation that they're falling down, but the heat signature's not fading. What the fuck's going off here? But that question lasts all of like 30 seconds in the book. But I love the idea of them coming across like a reenactment, getting stuck in with the reenactment, and then going, "Oh shit, why are these blades not hurting us?" It would have been a bit more of an interesting exploration of the predator culture and the reaction to them perhaps not being as challenged as they thought they were, or getting into a situation that they didn't quite understand with moral or ethical or code-based implications for them, without going too far into the Klingon thing. Could have been really interesting, but I don't know what the fuck was going off in this. And it's Robert, why was the wife so obsessed with how fat the husband was in this? What was that as well? There was like 3 or 4 occasions where his weight came up, and there was something about, he's a 30-something middle-aged bloke, and his tummy's getting a bit too much. It's starting to rival my fucking 8 months.
The pub nights are catching up to him.
Yeah, I was like, I feel
You're
targeted
like, I feel it.
here. Yeah.
As a mid-30s pub dweller, yeah.
And I didn't understand what was going off. Yeah, I've got no word. Sarah sums it up nicely in the chat there. It sounds like a really shit phalanx.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Aaron. This one for me was unfortunately the worst of the book. I agree with you that there's an interesting setup in terms of both predators running into reenactors and having like a misunderstanding there. Like that's an interesting premise, right? There's interesting stories that could be told with that, as well as the idea that these younger predators are being taken to other worlds to experience them before they go on proper hunts. Both of those ideas are quite interesting. Yeah, but where the story goes, the action just felt kind of awkward to me, and the fact that they had, these husbands had been killed, but this woman's still going to deliver this predator woman's baby because she's one of God's creatures, and
that sort of comes in halfway in the book.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a little bit better weaved into it than I remembered it being or had it in my head, but it was still like,
I mean, the whole religious angle just got eye rolls from me personally, but just did not go in a direction that I could dig, I guess. The dialogue, I didn't think any of the characters were particularly interesting or likable.
no.
I mean, the only character I kind of found interesting was the main predator female, the pregnant predator female, but I don't know. I mean, I'm all for seeing predators in atypical situations, but this was a little too far out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the two things I really hated was these bunch of people with fake weapons somehow beating like 3 predators, and then just the what like. So you got a pregnant predator and a pregnant woman, and the pregnant woman helps the pregnant predator give birth. But she goes from like being absolutely horrified at watching these things brutally butcher all of her friends to then like, oh, I must help this one give birth. Like even that as a concept, I felt could have been really interesting. It was just so badly done. It was literally just an instantaneous switch from look at these creatures ripping out my friend's skull to I must help you have a baby. It was the leap from one to the other was just instantaneous, and it just didn't feel real at all. And like you said, you touched on the interest. There were interesting ideas in here. I just felt like almost all of them were really badly developed. It was far and away the worst one in the book for me. It was just awful.
Yeah, it was not good. It wasn't good.
And like you said, I really liked Flesh and Blood. That was a really good book. Not quite Turnabout in South China Sea good, but it was a solid read. So this
And there was some great
really,
character work in that book as well.
yeah, this one was just really, it just basically missed on all counts.
So I want to mention it as well, though, just so it's out there. The other one I was really fucking disappointed with was
Oh yeah, I was going to ask, which one was it?
The Distance in Their Eyes, which was the one about the space butterfly.
Oh, see, now that one I knew was going to be. I knew reading it was going to be a contentious story, but I actually quite liked it.
I liked it a lot the first time I read it when we were editing it, but I was like, this needs a lot of touch up to really work, and that's one of the reasons I really dislike it, because it didn't get that touch up that it needed. In a lot of ways, this does not feel like a Predator story, because of the fucking Predator. You know, the Predator did not act like a predator, in my opinion. He was so fucked off with the disappointment of his hunt that he went round and fucking genocided a town of these helpless aliens. But this was another one of the ones where I found it really disappointing because the premise itself is really fucking interesting, of this seemingly unspectacular prey becoming something so much more significantly better and more interesting, that it just, because it felt so not Predator, it really didn't work as part of this anthology for me. It didn't feel right. So that was the other reason that was the other one I really hated in this, or was really disappointed by. Sorry, should I say?
I'm surprised. Yeah, because I had remembered you liking that one early on. But yeah, I remember you didn't like the whole angle of him just killing these other extraterrestrials that I guess were just so pathetic to him that he's like, well, I'm just going to off you because it's like pretty much a mercy killing because you're that pathetic at this point.
Well, I like that he was. Sorry, I like
No,
that he
go
was
ahead.
also sort of, because he didn't just go and butcher them immediately. He tried sort of killing them in different ways, like trying to rile them up. He was trying to get something out of them because he was like, you can't just be this willing to die, because they literally offer no resistance. They were just letting him kill them, and so he's like trying to like, come on, there's got to be more to this. And then I didn't feel like he. And then I figured after that he was just so annoyed with it. He was like, oh, fuck it, I was gonna kill you all then. I he didn't come across as dramatically not Predator. And I'm fine with different Predators being different. Like I'm fine with this one just saying, oh, fuck it, then I'm just going to stalk the whole lot of you.
There is a level of individuality to them that does work well, but this was just too far afield for me. But there were some other great ones in here that we haven't touched on, just to at least name them. I really enjoyed Lebens.
Do some honorable mentions.
The Titans was a great opener, and Scott Siegless was a great closer. You know, Dead Man's Switch, really enjoyed those.
I liked Ghost Story because it's pretty much Friday the 13th, but Predator.
Yes, Ghost Story was brilliant. I
was
really enjoyed that. And which one was the Monster by Michael Koch? Bigfoot. Yes.
Yeah, that was quite good.
Loved it. I think those extra ones on top of what we talked about already were probably my favorites.
What was the one where they were running through Brazil?
Oh, that What
That's
was
Proving Grounds. That was
Proving
okay.
Grounds? Yeah.
Yeah, it was okay.
That's right.
To be fair, I think the ones with the heavy predator focus were the ones I weren't that massively fussed on. Like, they were okay, but I didn't enjoy them as much as some of the others. But that might be a little bit of my bias, not liking the Oucher stuff come through. But
Oh, that's
there was
something
one.
else I will mention. There was a lot of stuff in this, at the risk of sounding like I'm tooting my own horn, but there was a lot of stuff in this that felt like authors had just read Xenopedia and lifted stuff from that to put in the books. Is that just me, or
Well,
like in terms of
oh
terminology
yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that?
I'll
I
let
felt
Aaron take
like
this
it
one.
was perhaps people who didn't really know Predator and they just sort of went there to grab terms and use them in the stories.
There is a bit of that, and that's some of the stuff we had to kind of fix or contribute towards. But we won't go too far into that. I will also point out, and to be fair, that's something wasn't that something I slagged you off a little bit about with Ultimate Prey? That other story I really fucking hated in Ultimate Prey, where I was like, this just reads like somebody who has seen the film once, gone and read a bunch of Xenopedia articles, and gone and put a story together without fully understanding the context. And I was like, this is where people like you make our lives
Yeah,
difficult.
down with that shit.
Yeah, go away, Wikipedias. I also want to point out Cannon Fodder as well as another one I quite enjoyed, which was a Predator POV one, but I thought worked out quite nicely. I could have done without all the family references. I didn't need a story where somebody was related to Leona, somebody was related to Anna, but the actual theme of that one I actually quite liked, of all these Predator fuck ups. But yeah, like I said, in general, really love this. It's one I would recommend quite easily. Not quite as strong as If It Bleeds, but probably solid 7.5, 8 out of 10, I think.
Aaron,
In
would you
general.
also say you like this better than Ultimate Prey overall? For me, I probably liked
Maybe
Ultimate
on
Prey a little
par.
bit more. I mean,
I'd say about on par.
they're both solid anthologies to me. Again, I feel that
Yeah.
there's more good here than bad, but
For sure. But we also know how quickly these were had to be thrown about, and that was something Brian also talked about in the last episode, because Titan was losing the license for Predator and AvP, so these were very difficult to work on. It was a very quick turnaround on these, and they came
In that
out.
case, then that's quite impressive because most of them were like I said. There was the occasional instance where stories felt rushed, but most of them felt like really well put together.
Mm-hmm.
So fair play.
Very much would recommend these. Lee, would you agree? Still one for people to go out and buy?
I said I think I'd probably put it just slightly above Ultimate Prey. Not as good as If It Bleeds, but If It Bleeds was so good. So yeah, I'd probably say it was the second out of these anthologies, but really, it's only Bug Hunt that was particularly
bad. Yeah,
and I got to bring this up.
Still had some really good stuff in that I loved.
There was
but
like
also had
3 or
some quieter
4
stuff.
really good ones on Bug Hunt.
So
I still feel like Bug Hunt has some of my favorites of these short stories in, but it also had some real dreck.
Go on, Adam.
I must bring this up. So the cover, okay.
I do better, Titan.
The colors are nice. I like the dark gray, metallic, and black, and the red highlights going on. Like, color wise, cover looks great. But can we stop just using toys for? I mean, okay, sometimes, like, I'm a photographer, I'll take toy pictures. Like, I get it. Sometimes you can make them look really cool. But for a book cover, like,
wasn't this just a Hot Toys?
This is the Hot Toys
promotional
Predator that was also on one of the Blu-ray collections. So to have it reused from that, and this was like Hot Toys' original version of the classic Jungle Hunter, where the proportions were a bit off. There's an artist we have commissioned a few times, Azog Art, and they did a recreation of this cover where they illustrated it, and it looked so great. And so for me, I'm like, there's so many artists that would love an opportunity like this, that would, spend more than a day or two just doing a quick Photoshop job. Like, can we get some illustrations, please? Like, I don't know. That was one of my favorite things about the older novels is how
Oh
great the
yeah, all
covers
the
looked, and that will sell a
all the
book.
Bantam ones.
How good a cover looks will sell a book.
I mean,
So
you've into Charybdis and Inferno's Fall had original art covers, and they
Mhm,
look so much more appealing than any of the other Titan novels, just
mhm.
for the fact that they've got a cool actual piece of artwork on the cover.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's a shame because we've gone from these Bantam books having people like fucking John Bolton. You know, he did the covers for some of Dark Horse's uh, comics, doing the
Even the
novel
DH,
covers as well.
even the DH Press books had amazing covers.
yeah,
Was it
I
Stephen
mean,
Yule off the top of my
some
head
are
Stephen
did
better
Yule
than
one,
those?
others.
yeah.
I liked
The Predator ones were
the
better
no
than the
exit
Alien
one.
ones.
Even most of the Alien ones I thought were really good. They released like like an original piece of art.
Yeah, there were Photoshop jobs, but yeah, it was better than a lot of Titans, Aliens, Cloned Marines renders and figures, pictures and stuff like that. But yeah, that's something we've criticized them about all along, all along. But they probably don't care if it's the last Predator book that they were going to put out. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Titan no longer has Predator or AvP as far as we're aware.
Not too much on the slate in general. I know Bishop just came out. We just got an announcement for another Alien novel. What's that one called, Aaron?
I'm just bringing it up now. I'm not keen on the title, but Alien Uncivil War.
Another war.
Yes, which is being written by Brendan Deneen. Deneen? Deneen? This is Brendan's first Alien writing, as far as I can tell. Hasn't written like any of the shorts in AvP or Bug Hunt. Sounds interesting, to be honest. After narrowly escaping a xenomorph attack and crash landing on the wrong planet, former military man Chris Temple just wants a peaceful life with his daughter. He just needs to deal with the brewing civil war and a xenomorph on the loose. Sounds like it could be different, and I get Sacrifice vibes off of the longer synopsis, should we say? So I'm quite looking forward to that one.
Yeah, premise sounds interesting. It should be early next year. Is that right?
About Alien Day, if I remember rightly, just before Alien Day. All Titans novels come out like 4 or 5 days before Alien Day.
Yep. So be looking forward to that, and it'll be interesting to see if they get the licenses back for Predator and AvP. You know, they've held the licenses for longer than any of the other
others,
publishers at
yeah.
this point. So,
And to be fair, they've done a good job. I mean,
last few
sure,
years not so much, but yeah, overall.
Sure, they've also got the worst of the Alien novels in existence, but when you've had it as long as they had now, it's quite easy to have the huge swings of things like Into Charybdis and Cold Forge and Phalanx, and also the absolute steaming pile of dog shit that is Colony War. You know, it's a big swing over a long period. I'm sorry, that novel offends the shit out of me. Having it over that period of time it's very easy to have really fucking good and really bad. So, and I'm not looking forward to Bishop, but I really hope Uncivil War does a good job. Do you want to start wrapping us up, Adam?
Sure. So thank you for listening or watching. You can always find us on our main hub of activity, which is our website, avpgalaxy.net. And we are also on all the major social channels, Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. We'd also like to give a shout out and thank you to our Patreon subscribers, which allows us to devote more time doing this and makes Aaron a little bit happier where he doesn't have to edit as much for all of his time, and we can devote more time to editorial projects or video projects and stuff like that. So real quick, I would just like to read off our Patreon list here. So for our tier 3, we have Bending Light, Chris Dazinger, Hunter Getz, Coman, Lucas, Xeno Hunter 5669, Xeno Predalien, Zarnold Quigley, you, Aaron, thank you. Acid Rain 161, Sarah, who's here in the chat, thank you. We appreciate you. Tom Painter. And now we're on to our tier 2, which is our warriors and hunters. We have Anon, Chris Osbrooks, Christian Matsky of Perfect Organism. We appreciate that. Darkness, our site administrator, throwing a bit in the pot. Javar Wayman, Josh Cambrian, Sizzy, Swinerider, Zach Walker, JF Boyven. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And now we are on to our tier 1s, Facehuggers and Youngbloods. Ian Aiello, Steve Patterson, and we also have 2 more new tier 2s, Sinan Sogekihai and the Batman. So thank you all for supporting us. We very much appreciate it. And if you'd like to support what we do at AvP Galaxy, just head on over to patreon.com/AvP Galaxy to see how you can do that.
Lee, do you want to shout out your haunt?
Yeah, Xenopedia. So it's avp.fandom.com. Drop by, get involved. I have been very lax of late because life has been getting in the way. But by all means, drop by, see what's happening, and love to have you there.
Cool. And you follow me on X @_Corporal Hicks. That's the only place I'm really knocking around other than our forums. Where I want to be stalked by other people.
If you'd like to follow me personally, it's @RidgeTop21 on X and Instagram.
You want to shout out the toy? No, not the toy, the virtual.
Virtual?
This is virtual photography.
Oh, right. Yes. I also do virtual photography where I take video game screenshots, and that is RidgeTop Virtual Photography on Instagram.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching, depending on your preferred outlet. This has been Corporal Hicks.
RidgeTop.
And who the fuck am I?
Get into the chopper.